Hey leaders, I hope everyone had a fantastic Labor Day. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the Fire Forge Leader podcast. Here a couple weeks ago, I was talking to a close friend of mine about how important it is to be visible to the troops. And visibility, it's just, man, it is important. It's even more important while things are intense out there on the battlefield, such as meeting new goals or while the team is being challenged. We need to be even more visible. Now, he made mention of something that I thought was quite intriguing, and how that is no different than medieval times all the way through present, when they would use what they were referred to as the royal standard. Now, the royal standard is that flag that was brought out onto the battlefield when the king was present. And this would excite the troops because they knew the king was there and was with them in the fight. They didn't have to physically see the king, but they knew that he was with them. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that we go around waving this leadership standard, this royal standard. But I am saying that we need to be visible in our leadership. Our teams need to feel our presence. Now, before we get into that, let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Steve Baumgartner, and I'm your host and founder of the Fire Forge Leader podcast. And my mission here today, and the mission of this podcast every day, is to serve you through providing knowledge, tools, and resources around leadership strategies on three primary battlefronts. Those battlefronts are simply in the workplace, out in your community, and most importantly, with your family. Now let's get into it.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forge Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
I want to start this episode out by telling you a personal story that I had in my current role. And this one makes me chuckle still to this day. But over time, I've made it a point to make it to the cafeteria multiple times every week. And I find that this allows me to be more personal with the people who really are out in the plant doing the actual work. And it's more important to see them in the cafeteria than it is even to see them on the plant floor. And the reason for this is we get to talk about many different things, right? Like kids, spouses, hobbies, things that motivate them, not just the mission of the company. Well, when I first started doing this practice, right? When I first got there and I started up this practice, I had a woman come up to me, and I'll tell you, it felt like it was pretty aggressive. And I want you to also put this in context that my plant is on the southern edge of Kansas City proper. And I wasn't quite used to how people talk to each other yet there. But she comes in and she sees me in there and she goes, "What in the hell are you doing here?" Now I took a step back and I said, "Hey, I'm not sure we've met yet, but I'm the new plant manager here. It's nice to meet you." And she said in reply to this, she goes, "I know who you are, but why are you in here?" And she points around the cafeteria, right? "Why are you in here?" Now, a little bit more context. This is a union environment. And I didn't know all the rules yet. So at this point, I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, did I break some sort of unique union contractual thing? So I responded back, trying to smooth out the situation a little bit. Am I not supposed to be in here? I simply came in here so that I could get to know my team. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, she states. She said something about she didn't mean it like that, uh, that she told me, she goes, we just never saw that other guy come in here. You're more than welcome to be in here. I'm just curious as to why you are in here because that's not what we're used to. Now, interestingly enough, I talk to this lady all the time now. She is very, very happy to see me when I come into the cafeteria. And I also want to mention, I don't want to talk bad about the last gentleman who filled my role either. He was at the end of his career and his ankle was jacked up beyond belief. This man couldn't walk very well and he was waiting on surgery. All right. And to put it in more context, my office is a hike to the cafeteria. So, I don't blame him at all. And I don't want you to take that wrong. I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything like that. But I do want to state it is very important if you're in leadership to be visible and to stay visible. So I want to go back to what my friend also talked about with the royal standard, right? The royal standard, since medieval times, was there to notify the troops that the king was present on the battlefield. Now, like I said, the traditions, it goes back to medieval times when kings would get on the battlefield and lead armies into battle, or to even travel across their realms, right? When they would take a big journey, they would also lead that journey. The standard would be carried by the monarch's retainers, signaling their presence and command. Now, over time, this evolved into the practice of raising the standard whenever wherever the monarch was residing, be it a castle, a palace, or even a temporary camp. Now, I don't want anybody to take me wrong in this episode. I'm not saying that leadership is anything like royalty. You should know me by now that I believe in servant leadership, not authoritative leadership. Nor am I saying that a leader should be treated like royalty in any way, shape, or form. Now, what I am referring to is that this royal standard, it was a physical manifestation that showed the people that were led by this monarch that the king was there to support, that there was stability and continuity in the mission. So what does that look like in the style of leadership that we talk about here? That standard stood for something. People knew what it was about. We need to share the vision and the mission. That's our standard. We need to share information and we need to lead from the front, just like the king did with the standard. And guess what? All of these things you need to be visible for. You can't do it from an office. Now, switching gears a little bit, I want to tell you college football's starting up, right? And I'm a college football fan. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not one of these guys who, puts it above all else, but I do like watching football. Now, none of that NFL crap, bunch of damn prima donnas. But college football, these guys are hungry, right? These guys are trying to make a name for themselves. They're energetic, whatever. But what I really like to do while I'm watching college football is I like to watch the leadership. The coaches, the assistant coaches, that sort of thing. And something that I found that, just simply brings up acid in my throat is when assistant coaches always coach from the box. This drives me nuts. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the importance of being able to see the entire field and positioning and not only see it from this one point, right? But it rubs me wrong when you don't ever see them go down to the field and be with the ones that are fighting the battle. Drives me nuts. Now, I'm not here to get in football, this is right, this is wrong. I don't care, right? From a leadership standpoint, it is wrong. You need to come down, you need to interact with your people, and it doesn't happen just in the locker room or just over a headset. You need to see them face to face. But it's also not just about being seen, right? It's about engaging with your people. It's about answering the questions that they have. It's about listening to the concerns of the team. It's about getting to know your people. And when you're visible on the battlefield and when you're doing all these things that I just talked about, right? It builds trust. When leaders are visible and accessible to their teams, they build trust with those team members. And I'm going to branch off a couple different ways, but employees are more likely to trust a leader who's present and engaged. It demonstrates to them commitment and accountability. It's the same way with your kids. If your kids see you doing what you're asking them to do, it builds trust. And credibility. Regular visibility allows leaders to demonstrate competence and authenticity. When the team members see the leaders participating and addressing challenges with them, it reinforces the leader's credibility and authority. It also enhances communication. You open up channels of communication when you are visible, when you're in front of them, when you're accessible to them. This visibility fosters open communication channels between the leaders and their teams. When they're seen regularly, the team members feel more comfortable in approaching the leader with their questions, concerns, and most importantly, their ideas. And then there's this clarity of vision as well with this communication. We can effectively communicate the organization and our own visions, goals, expectations. And this helps to ensure that everyone is aligned and working towards the same objectives. And then just like the royal standard, it boosts employee engagement and morale. It boosts the engagement because employees tend to be more engaged when they feel seen and heard by their leaders. This visibility helps create a culture of inclusion and recognition where team members feel valued and motivated, right? When you go out to the line and you see someone doing something good, call it out, right? They get recognized. When they get recognized, they want to engage. They feel valued and they feel motivated to do different things. And then morale, a visible leader. We can directly impact the morale of our team by being present get my English right, during both good and challenging times. Our presence during the tough periods, though, really shows solidarity and support with those team members, which really boosts that team's morale. Now, if you haven't listened to it, I put on an episode it was talking about culture, and it has lion in the title, but it was really talking about the culture of the lion and the culture of my plant as a whole. And it really shows this morale portion quite a bit. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that if you haven't already. And then overall, it strengthens our organizational culture. So, visible leaders, we have this distinct opportunity to shape and reinforce the entire organization's culture by our actions, our behaviors, and our interaction with employees. This helps establish a consistent and cohesive cultural identity. And then there's this role modeling concept, right? Leaders who are visible, we serve as role models for our team. We show them the values, we show them the work ethic and behaviors expected within the organization. And that inspires others to emulate these positive traits. And then ultimately, it brings the team together in this cohesive team spirit sort of thing, right? I can't find the exact words I want to use, but there's this team cohesion that happens. When we are on the battlefield with our folks, it fosters a sense of unity and teamwork. When leaders are seen working alongside their team, it reinforces the idea that everyone is working together toward common goals. You know, it just, we have to be careful with this at the same time, right? Because if I go out onto my plant floor and I point at something, there's going to be people who look, right? So I need to make sure what I'm pointing at is what I want from the people. So we need to be careful with this as well. But it also builds relationships. When we go onto the plant floor, when we go and engage with our family, when we go and engage with our community, we build stronger relationship with our team members. This connection ensures, well, it can ensure, it doesn't necessarily directly ensure, but it can ensure and it can enhance collaboration and also fosters a sense of belonging among the team members, right? Relationships bring people in. Now, if you're not visible, it really just leads to the inverse of what I just talked about, right? And just real quickly, it leads to an erosion of trust in you personally as their leader and your credibility as the leader erodes. There's a breakdown in communication and engagement. People stop understanding what the mission is. And accountability and performance falters. Now, listen to me clearly here. I am not judging from a superior seat. I understand that this can be very difficult, very difficult. I get it. Recently, my job role has changed. I've gone from a plant manager at work to a general manager. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean, going from a plant manager to general manager? You know, if you look on LinkedIn, it's one and the same, it seems. Well, for the company that I work for, the expectation around this went from I am responsible for everything that happens inside my plant walls as a plant manager to being responsible for everything that happens inside my plant walls and everything outside of the walls of my plant that could affect the product or the plant. So, with that being said, that's come with many challenges, many challenges. Ones that I'm definitely up for, don't get me wrong, But there's more time commitment. There's more relationships I have to build. There's more. There's just a lot more to it. But the biggest challenge that I found is that I found myself failing the people that I lead by not being as visible as I once was. So how do we tackle that? There's going to be changes. There's going to be more expectations. There's going to be more, right? So how do we fly our own royal? Wait, let's scratch that. Let's call it the leadership standard. Now, to be able to do this, we really need to take a step back and think about how we are showing up to our teams. Are we showing up in a way the people we lead think of us as a good leader? Because that's important. We need to show up in a way that the people think that we're a good leader. Not the people that we work for, but the people we lead. Are we being visible on the battlefield is the next question that I'd ask you. And are we on the same side? All right, I'm not going to just leave you with questions, okay? Here are some of the things that I'm committing to at work going forward to be more visible with my team. I'm switching my own hours so that I can come in earlier to attend some of the day shift morning huddles. And I'm also switching my own hours so that I can be here later some days to attend some of the night shifts as well. Both of these are going to give me an opportunity to communicate with the men and women who make my plant as well as me successful. I'm also going to block some time blocks on my calendar every day to make sure that I go down to the floor and make sure that I am seeing the struggles that the people have and also ask them for ideas. And I'm also going to get back to engaging a lot more down in the cafeteria like I first talked about. Those are the things that I'm doing. Those are the things that I've committed to. But I also want to throw a little bit of caution here because we also lead our families. With changing my hours a little bit, that's going to affect my family. How am I going to also continue to lead at home better? And that's where intentionality comes into play. And you got to keep all these things in balance. All right. So let's wrap this thing up. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter what's going on at home. It doesn't matter what's going on out at your community or what's going on at work. There's demands on us at every point. If you're going to accept that leadership role, as a parent, as a spouse, as a leader at work, a leader out in the community, none of the excuses matter why you're not showing up and being visible to the people that you lead. You need to figure it out and you need to be visible. So when we fly our leadership standard high and we're visible with our teams become more cohesive. The stock our teams have in us as a leader is raised. Our communication gets better with our teams. The culture grows and our teams engage. So I want you to stop and think for a minute. Don't just let this all go to the wayside. I want you to stop and reflect today on how visible you are in all aspects of your leadership. And I want you to identify one action today that you can take this week to be more visible as a leader. All right, once again, thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fire Forge Leader Podcast. If you found this discussion valuable, please share it with your network and leave a review. Until next time, keep forging your path with purpose and passion. Now, I would also like to hear any actions that you take away from this episode, so feel free to hit me up on the socials at Fireforge Leader.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.